Our gospel this morning coming to us from the 12th chapter of Luke. You remember now Jesus is on his way to Jerusalem. His fame is spreading, the crowds are growing, and he's teaching about discipleship, what it means to be a follower. Again, the Holy Gospel of our Lord Jesus Christ according to St. Luke. Glory to you, Lord Christ. Now someone in the crowd said to Jesus, "Teacher, tell my brother to divide the family inheritance with me." But he said to him, "Friend, who set me to be a judge or arbitrator over you?" And then he said to them, "Take care. Be on your guard against all kinds of greed, for one's life does not consist in the abundance of possessions." And then he told them a parable. The land of a rich man produced abundantly. He thought to himself, "What should I do? I have no place to store my crops." And then he said, "I will do this. I will pull down my barns and build larger ones, and there I will store all my grain and my goods, and I will say to my soul, 'Soul, you have ample goods laid up for many years. Relax, eat, drink, be merry.' But God said to him, 'You fool, this very night your life is being demanded of you. And the things you have prepared, whose will they be? So it is with those who store up treasures for themselves, but are not rich toward God.'" I didn't write it. I'm just reading it. It's funny, the financial environment we find ourselves in. It was a while back, I can't remember how long ago. Sandy came home and said, "Okay, that's it, we're not eating anymore." And I said, "How come?" She said, "We can't afford it." And she said, "Not only that, but we're not going anywhere either." And I said, "Why not?" And she said, "We can't afford it." And a lot of people a little bit nervous, got the eye on the Fed, what's happening with inflation. It's a tricky situation, it's complicated. People are worried about money. And so we come to this gospel. This guy's worried about money. And this guy's... it's a legitimate concern. I think of all the pastoral issues that I've confronted in 30 years of ministry, there's none that gets uglier when there's money on the table and somebody croaks. Who's going to get it? How much? Is it going to be evenly divided? Am I going to get my share? And they start thinking about it a long, long time before. I'm telling you, the gloves come off. They come off. Let's get the lawyers. Anyway, it's ugly. It's ugly. And this guy wants to pull Jesus into the fray. Can you imagine it? Here's Jesus, the fame is spreading, great spiritual teacher, he's there, and there's a crowd and all that. And here comes this guy muscling his way through the crowd. "I want you, I demand that you make my brother give me the audacity. And what is he consumed with? What is he consumed by? What owns him? And Jesus tells a little story. It's an interesting story. Here's a guy, and, the earth has been good to him. He's more than he needs for sure. And going to tear down his barn, build bigger, and hoard and hoard and hoard, and more and more and more and more. Doesn't say anything about, the guy down the road, he's not having quite the luck that I have, so I'm just going to shovel some that way. Or I'm going to sell what I have and give my, there's none of that. It's what can I do? How can I have more? That's what greed, greed is like a ravenous beast. The only thing that's bad about greed is that it's never satisfied. Just more. I remember, I'm not sure who it was, one of those guys like Vanderbilt or Roosevelt or, one of those early founders that just Carnegie made just gajillions. And they asked him, how much is enough? And the response was a little bit more. A little bit more. That's greed. That's greed. And it's a survival impetus. We do need shelter. We need food. We need community. We need mutual and, respect and so forth. And when those basic survival urges go out of control, you wind up with a thing like greed. So, it's interesting to me, and this is where we can learn from our brothers and sisters in the Buddhist tradition. Because, in Christianity, one of the great hallmarks of our faith is the incarnation. The Word became flesh, which means to us that the entire creation is endued with the spirit of its creator. God in material things, life, incarnation. That's a hallmark of our tradition. Now, one of the hallmarks of the Buddhist tradition is the notion of non-attachment. You've all heard this before. We suffer. That's the first noble truth. We suffer. Welcome to the planet. We suffer. Why do we suffer? We suffer because we're attached. We're attached to things that bring suffering into our lives. What can we do? Non-attach. And so, if you go up on YouTube, for example, and just hit non-attachment, there's all sorts, and I've listened to dozens this week, teachings on non-attachment. And they're profound. They're really quite helpful. Non-attachment came into my life by way of my daughter. She said, Dad, have you heard about minimalism? She said, do you know who Joshua Fields Milburn is? I haven't a clue. How about Ryan Nicodemus? I said, no. She said, Dad, you're living under a rock. Living under a rock. So here's Joshua Fields Milburn, okay? He's from Ohio, Midwestern guy. Kind of nice-looking young man, and he was, by any standard of our culture, successful. Great job, a lot of money, big house, nice car, more things than he needed. Everything was going fine until his mom died. Well, what had happened was his mom, who was divorced, sold the home in Ohio and moved to Florida, which is what any good Midwestern person does. She went down there and was down there not very long and was diagnosed with cancer, very violent form, and 3 months later was dead. Not only did his mom die, but he divorced. His wife left him all within a month. So, he hit somewhat of a wall. Joshua hit somewhat of a wall. So he goes down, after his mom, he goes down to Florida to deal with her stuff. She was not a hoarder, but let's say that she was a collector. And she moved from, a big Midwestern 3-bedroom whatever into a 2-bedroom apartment. And both of the bedrooms were stuffed with stuff. Now, one of the things that we're good at as a culture, as a consumerist culture, is we're good at getting a lot of stuff, more stuff than we can ever use or need. And so, he goes down there to deal with all this stuff. And first thing he does is he calls U-Haul. He said, I want the biggest truck that you have, and so forth. And so he orders this 35-foot U-Haul truck to come to the house, and he's going to fill it with his mom's stuff. And then he contacted a storage unit, and he's going to put it all in storage. He's going to put it all in storage. And before the truck comes, and he's looking at all this stuff, it's stuff, and he's looking, one of the bedrooms, kind of digging around, and he sees these boxes that are labeled 1, 2, 3, and 4. And you'll have to come back next week to hear the rest of the story. What they were, these boxes were full of all his paperwork from elementary school, grades 1, 2, 3, and 4. And he's going through these boxes, and something happened. Something happened. And he realized the difference between attachment and non-attachment, and began to ask himself, what is it about this stuff that I really want, need, and so forth, and what are treasured memories? And so he took a couple of items from box 1, first grade, a couple from 2, took photographs of them, and the rest he called the U-Haul truck. Don't need it. Called the storage. Don't need it. Started giving away to anybody that lived in the same apartment building anything they wanted. Said, open house. Come get it. Gave as much as he could away. Whatever was of real value, he sold and gave to a charity that supported the work, the oncology work that his mother was undergoing at the time of her diagnosis with cancer. And he said, it just freed me up. It freed up my whole life. And so he goes around the country now with this other fellow named Ryan Nicodemus. How'd you like to have that last name of Nicodemus? And he talks about minimalism. I mean, he quit his job, sold his house, downsized everything, and now he just has what he likes and what he needs, and he goes around the country and said, stop, just stop. It's like Dave Ramsey said, as a nation, here's the banner under which everyone flies. Spend what you don't have, to buy what you don't need, to impress people you don't even know or like. Spend what you don't have, to buy what you don't need, to impress people you don't even know or like. Do you realize the debt that this country carries, the individual credit card debt of people buying stuff they don't need? And our attraction, our relationship with possessions is so far off the charts. We have something to learn from our Buddhist friends. And where do we practice non-attachment? Where does this happen to us most concretely? You just practice it. 478. What happened to the chattering mind that never stopped? It kind of quieted down for a bit. Learning how to let go. The fact is that too often the tail is wagging the dog. Wagging the dog. We're just trying to keep up, and it's a desire that's never satisfied. And we'll spend whatever we can beyond to have what we don't need, just to play the game and to keep up. Is your only value your ability to consume? Is your only value your ability to consume? This culture would say, absolutely. Absolutely. And Jesus says of the rich fool, I'm telling you, you don't get it, pal. You don't understand impermanence. Everything has a lifespan. And yours is ending shortly. And then what? And then what? And so these great spiritual teachers, they're great spiritual teachers from the Dalai Lama on down. Be very mindful of your relationship with possessions. One of my favorite audio resources, It Sounds True, And this past week they had, with the founder of the company, Tammy Shyman, they had her in conversation with two people whose expertise is in money management. And the conversation was called Money Manners. And they were talking about the relationship that people have with money. And one of the proponents who works as a therapist with people who have problems in this area, either spending, shopping, saving, scrimping, never, blah, 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 is to take a money walk. And you go on the money walk and you just talk to your money. You talk to it. And you have a relationship with it. Money is a being. Money is an entity. It's a force. It's a power. It's an energy. And it's a relationship with possessions. So how are you doing? You know, the question is asked, how are you doing? How are you doing? What's more important, God or money? I mean, can't love them both. That's what he said. Maybe you can. But it would seem that, striking a balance here is what's important. So, anyway, I didn't know about any of these people. My daughter came in one day, and I said, she was in my closet. I don't know why. And she said, if you have too much stuff in here. And, when you look at the prayer book's funny. Because you'll see, look at the edge of your prayer book. Can you see the part that it's got kind of oil stains from fingers? Okay, that's what's used. That's what's used. And in my closet, it's just like that. I have a couple of things that I really like and I wear all the time, and then some stuff that I wear occasionally, and then some stuff I haven't worn in years. It's like, the sport coats have so much dust on their shoulders that I can barely, if I have to wear one, I can barely brush it off. And she said, Dad, I'm going to minimize your closet. Are you up for it? And I said, well, what do you mean? She said, well, we're just going to go through everything. And I said, wait a second. Wait a second. So here's what happened. She took everything out of the closet. Everything. Everything on a hanger just came in, put it on the floor. Put it on the floor. Went in the bureau. Dump that. And went through everything. And she made 3 piles. Absolutely need. Can't do without. Question mark. Give it away. You don't need it. And, what happens is that you get into stuff like, Sandy gave me that 20 years ago. You think Sandy's feelings are going to be hurt if you throw away a coat that she gave you 25 years ago and that you never wear because you never liked? And I realized in the process of the whole experiment that I was developing a relationship with my possessions. Understanding the dividing line between who I was and what they meant to me. And it's true, there are some things that we really like. Mean a great deal to us. They carry a tremendous emotional meaning. And those things should be kept. But there's a lot of stuff that all of us have that we just don't need and don't want. And those kinds of things are the clutter physically that are metaphors for the clutter mentally. And so it's important to have a discipline, a spiritual discipline. This is where spiritual growth occurs, in the practice of letting go. I can remember a retreat that I went to with my favorite teacher, Cynthia Borgio, who teaches on centering prayer. And she said, I'm going to show you, at the very beginning of the retreat, she said, I'm going to show you something that's a metaphor for everything that I'm going to talk about. And if you understand this gesture, you'll understand exactly everything that I'm trying to teach. And she went like this. If you missed it, I'll show it to you again. Let it go. Let it go. And you know what it's like? It's like going to the gym and picking up a barbell. Every time you let a thought go, it strengthens the ability to let things go. Now, here's an important thing. Fear. Fear is an important thing. And because it's an important thing, it's important to be able to let it go. because it's just a thing. Now, regardless of how dramatically the economy tanks, there is absolutely nothing that you can do about it, especially be afraid. It does not help. And so, when concern about the economy begins to trickle into your central nervous system, you want to have an antidote. You want to have a strong muscle to let stuff go. I'm not encouraging, we're not talking about here being so spiritually transcendent that your feet are not on the ground. I am not saying that. I am not saying that. I'm just saying that the relationship is important, and the ability to non-attach and to understand your relationship with possessions is interwoven with your relationship to your true and real self, which is God. So don't be like the rich fool who, because of blessings that he had no hand in anyway, the earth was just bountiful, decided to hoard and keep rather than to share and be grateful. If you don't need it, give it away. Give it away.
Contributions to St. Luke's Episcopal Church help to make the digital ministry and other outreach within the community possible. If it is in your heart to make a donation, St. Luke's secure PayPal link, as well as the church's mailing information, may be found in the description of this video. Thank you.